Berakhot 3b. The Gemara answers, this halakha applies even in the case of a new, sturdy ruin, where there is no danger of collapse. Therefore, the reason because of suspicion is cited in order to warn one not to enter a new ruin as well. The Gemara continues to object, and let this halakha be derived because of demons? The Gemara answers, demons are only a threat to individuals. So because of demons would not apply to a case where two people enter a ruin together. The Gemara objects. But if there are two people entering a ruin together, then there is no suspicion either. There is no prohibition against two men to be alone with a woman as, in that case, there is no suspicion of untoward behavior. Consequently, if two men enter a ruin together, there is no room for suspicion. The Gemara answers, if two individuals known to be immoral enter together, there is suspicion even though there are two of them. The Gemara considers why, because of collapse, is necessary. Let the prohibition be derived from suspicion and demons. The Gemara responds, there are times when this reason is necessary, e.g., when two upstanding individuals enter a ruin together, although there is neither concern of suspicion nor of demons, there remains concern lest the ruin collapse. The Gemara considers the third reason, because of demons. Why is it necessary to include because of demons? Let the prohibition be derived from suspicion and collapse. The Gemara responds, there are cases where this is the only concern. For example, where it is a new ruin into which two upstanding individuals enter, so there is neither concern lest it collapse nor of suspicion. The Gemara points out, however, that if there are two people, there is also no concern of demons. As such, the question remains, in what case can demons be the sole cause not to enter a ruin? The Gemara responds, generally speaking, two individuals need not be concerned about demons, but if they are in their place, i.e., a place known to be haunted by demons, see Isaiah 13:21, we are concerned about demons even with two people. And if you wish, say instead, actually, this refers to the case of an individual entering a new ruin located in a field. There is no suspicion, as finding a woman in the field is uncommon, and since it is a new ruin, there is no danger of collapse. However, there is still a concern of demons. The sages taught in a Tosefta, the night is comprised of 4 watches. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Rabbi Natan says, the night is comprised of 3 watches. The Gemara explains, what is Rabbi Natan's reasoning? As it is written, and Gideon and the 100 men who were with him came to the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch. Judges 7:19. It was taught in the Tosefta, middle means nothing other then there is one before it and one after it, from the fact that the verse refers to a middle watch. The fact that the night is comprised of 3 watches may be inferred. And what does Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi say about this proof? He argues that it is inconclusive, as one could say. To what does middle refer? It refers to one of the 2 middle watches. And how would Rabbi Nathan respond? He would say, despite Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi's objection, is one of the middle watches written in the verse. The middle watch is written. This indicates that the night is comprised of only 3 watches. What is Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi's reasoning? Rabbi Zerika said that Rabbi Ami said that Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi's opinion is based on a comparison of 2 verses. One verse says, "At midnight I rise to give thanks for your righteous laws." Psalm 119:62. And the other verse says, "My eyes forestall the watches, that I will speak of your word." Psalms 119:148. Taken together, these verses indicate that their author, King David, rose at midnight, 2 watches before dawn, in order to study Torah. How is it possible to reconcile these 2 verses? Only if there are 4 watches in the night does one who rises 2 watches before dawn rise at midnight. And how does Rabbi Nathan reconcile these 2 verses? He holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehoshua, for we learned in a Mishnah that Rabbi Yehoshua says, one is permitted to recite the morning Shema during the time when people rise, until the 3rd hour of the day, as it is the custom of kings to rise during the 3rd hour. Since it is customary for kings to rise during the 3rd hour of the day, if David rose at midnight, he would be awake for 6 hours of the night and 2 hours of the day, which amounts to 2 watches. Therefore, King David could say that he forestalls the watches, unquote, as he rose 2 watches before the rest of the kings in the world. Rav Ashi said that the verses can be reconciled in accordance with Rabbi Nathan's opinion in another way. 1 1/2 watches are still called watches in plural. Therefore, King David could rise at midnight, yet maintain that he forestalls the watches. Following this discussion, another halakha that Rabbi Zerika said, that Rabbi Ami said, that Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said, is cited. Before the dead, one may speak only of matters relating to the dead, as speaking of other matters appears to be contemptuous of the deceased, underscoring that he is unable to talk while those around him can. Therefore, one must remain fully engaged in matters relating to him. 2 traditions exist with regard to the details of this halakha in the name of Rabbi Abba bar Kahana. According to one version, Rabbi Abba bar Kahana said, this halakha was only said with regard to matters of Torah. Speaking of other matters, however, is not prohibited, since no contempt is expressed for the deceased by the fact that he is unable to speak of such topics. Others say another version of this halakha in the name of Rabbi Abba bar Kahana. This halakha was said even with regard to matters of Torah, and all the more so with regard to other matters. If one must refrain from speaking of matters of Torah, regarding which one is commanded to speak, and limit himself to matters concerning the deceased, all the more so should he refrain from speaking of other matters, regarding which one is not commanded to speak. Incidental to the Gemara's mention of King David, other sources are cited that describe his actions. Regarding that which was cited above, that he would rise in the middle of the night in order to serve his Creator, the Gemara asks, did David rise at midnight? He rose in the evening, as it is written, I rose with the Neshef and cried, I hoped for your word. Psalms 119, 147. And how do we know that this Neshef is the evening? As it is written, in the Neshef, in the evening of the day, in the blackness of night and the darkness. Proverbs 7:9. Apparently, King David did indeed rise when it was still evening. The Gemara suggests several ways to resolve this contradiction. Rabbi Oshaya said that Rabbi Aha said, David said as follows, midnight never passed me by in my sleep. Sometimes I fulfilled the verse, quote, I rose with the Neshef and cried, unquote. But I always at least fulfilled this verse, quote, at midnight I rise to give thanks for your righteous laws, unquote. Rabbi Zerah said, until midnight David would doze like a horse, as a horse dozes, but never sleeps deeply. From midnight on he would gain the strength of a lion. Rav Ashi said, until midnight he would study Torah. As it is written, I rose with the Neshef and cried, I hoped for your word. And from midnight on he would engage in songs and praise, as it is written, at midnight I give rise to give thanks. To this point, the discussion has been based on the assumption that Neshef means evening. The Gemara asks, does Neshef really mean evening? Doesn't Neshef mean morning? As it is written, and David slew them from the Neshef until the evening of the next day. 1 Samuel 30, verse 17. Doesn't this verse mean from the morning until the night? In which case Neshef must mean morning. The Gemara responds, no. This verse means that David slew them from one evening until the next evening. The Gemara rejects this response. If so, let the verse be written from the Neshef until the Neshef, or from the evening until the evening. Why would the verse employ two different terms for a single concept? Rather, Rava said there are two times referred to as Neshef, and the word can refer to either evening or morning. Neshef must be understood in accordance with its Aramaic root. The night moves past, Neshaf, and the day arrives, and the day moves past, Neshaf, and the night arrives. When King David said, "At midnight I rise," the assumption is that he rose precisely at midnight. The Gemara asks, did David know exactly when it was midnight? Even Moses, our teacher, did not know exactly when it was midnight. How do we know this about Moses? As it is written that he said to Pharaoh, "Thus said the Lord, about midnight I will go out into the midst of Egypt." Exodus 11:4. The word "about" indicates that it was only an approximation. The Gemara clarifies, what is the meaning of the expression, "about midnight"? Did Moses say it or did God say it? If we say that the Holy One, blessed be he, himself said, "about midnight" to Moses, is there doubt before God in heaven? Rather, this must be understood as follows. God told Moses at midnight, but from the fact that when Moses came to Pharaoh he said, "about midnight," apparently Moses was uncertain about the exact moment of midnight. Moses, the greatest of all the prophets, was uncertain. And David knew? The Gemara offers several answers to this question. David had a sign indicating when it was midnight. As Rav Ahar bar Bizna said, that Rabbi Shimon Hasida said, "A lyre hung over David's bed, and once midnight arrived, the northern midnight wind would come and cause the lyre to play on its own. David would immediately rise from his bed and study Torah until the first rays of dawn. Once dawn arrived, the sages of Israel entered to advise him with regard to the various concerns of the nation and the economy. They said to him, "Our master, the king, your nation requires sustenance." He said, "Go and sustain one another. Provide each other with whatever is lacking." The sages of Israel responded to him with a parable. A single handful of food does not satisfy a lion, and a pit will not be filled merely from the rain that falls directly into its mouth. But other water must be piped in, geonim. So too, the nation cannot sustain itself using its own resources. King David told them, "Go and take up arms with the troops in battle in order to expand our borders and provide our people with the opportunity to earn a livelihood." The sages immediately seek advice from Ahithophel. The sages immediately seek advice from Ahithophel to determine whether or not it was appropriate to go to war at that time and how they should conduct themselves. And they consult the Sanhedrin in order to receive the requisite license to wage war under those circumstances. Tosafot HaRosh. And they ask the Urim ve Tumim, whether or not they should go to war, and whether or not they would be successful. Rav Yosef said, "Upon what verse is this Agada based? As it is written, and after Ahithophel was Jehoiada son of Benayahu and Evyatar, and the general of the king's army, Joav." 1 Chronicles 27:34. The individuals named in this verse correspond with the roles in the Agada as follows. Ahithophel is the advisor whose advice they sought first with regard to going to war. And so it says, "Now the counsel of Ahithophel, which he counseled in those days, was as a man who inquires of the word of God. So is the counsel of Ahithophel, both with David and with Absalom." 2 Samuel 16:23. Benayahu ben Jehoiada corresponds to the Sanhedrin, since he was the head of the Sanhedrin, and Evyatar corresponds to the Urim Ve-Tumim, as Evyatar ben Ahimelech, the priest, would oversee inquiries directed to the Urim Ve-Tumim. See 1 Samuel 23:9. And so it says regarding Benayahu ben Jehoiada's position as head of the Sanhedrin. And Benayahu ben Jehoiada was over the Kereti and over the Peleti. 2 Samuel 20:23. And why was the Sanhedrin called Kereti Upeleti? It was called Kereti because they were decisive, Koratim, in their pronouncements. It was called Peleti because their pronouncements and wisdom were wondrous. Muflaim, the head of the Kereti Upeleti, was the head of the Sanhedrin, according to the order of the verse, upon being instructed by King David to go to war. The sages first consulted with Ahithophel, then with the Sanhedrin. Then they would ask the Urim Ve-Tumim, and only thereafter was the general of the king's army, Joav, given the command to ready the military for battle. Rav Yitzhak bar Ada, and some say Rav Yitzhak, son of Rav Edi, said, "From what verse is it derived that David's lyre would wake him at midnight? Awake, my glory, awake, harp and lyre, I will wake the dawn." Psalms 57, verse 9. This means that the playing lyre has already woken, and now I must engage in Torah study until dawn. Rabbi Zera offered a different solution to the question of whether Moses and David knew exactly when it was midnight, and said, Moses certainly knew when it was midnight, and David also knew. The Gemara asks, if David knew, then why did he need the lyre? The Gemara answers, he needed the lyre to wake him from his sleep. Similarly, with regard to Moses, since Moses knew the precise moment of midnight, why did he say, about midnight, instead of at midnight? Moses did so because he maintained, lest Pharaoh's astrologers err and believe midnight to be earlier. Since no disaster would have occurred, they would say, Moses is a liar. Moses spoke in accordance with the principle articulated by the Master. Accustom your tongue to say, I do not know, lest you become entangled in a web of deceit.